I share the concerns about veteran suicide with the good gentleman from the 21st. I also know, as a veteran, that veterans rely on each other when it comes to mental health. This underlying bill is seeking to ensure that people undergo training and show competency and have a cleared background. This is ensuring that the members of our society that are the highest trained in weapons, firearms, ones who have gone through immersion training. The U.S. Army basic training involves 9 weeks of immersion where you're assigned a firearm, an M4 now. It's very similar to the AR-15 rifle, and you take care of it to demonstrate safety throughout. The level of training that our veterans get far exceeds anything that could be added into legislation. And while veteran suicide is a huge concern to all of us, this underlying bill is not going to address the problem. There is other legislative work that we could do that would address that problem and really help fill that gap. I am urging we adopt this to recognize that additional training, a permit to purchase, is not going to fix veteran suicide. So please, I urge you vote with me yes on this amendment. These veterans who have served our country, who swore this oath to the Constitution to uphold and defend our Constitution, protect our way of life here at home. Just because we've sent them places that may have caused wounds that are not seen does not mean that their constitutional rights are any less than the rest of ours. And what we're saying by not adopting this amendment would be that their constitutional rights and their training, that's not enough. Their training has been negated, their life experience. By adopting this amendment, you and I, we are telling our veterans that their training and their service was enough, and we respect it. I urge your adoption. So we have heard tonight from some of the members about how persons in the Guard and Reserve frequently have secret clearances, have other screenings that have checked into their background. One thing that I recall from my service is that when we had soldiers who would get a DUI, when we had soldiers that would be in any sort of a domestic dispute, and if they found themselves on the wrong side of the law and they lost their right to own a firearm, they were separated from the military for that. For these people, these members of our Guard and Reserve, to remain eligible to be in service, they must retain the right to own a firearm, or they will be separated. Without this amendment, we are going to be doing additional and enhanced checks that are redundant. They cost money to our service members, and this check is already being done every time they drill because they have the right, or we wouldn't have them in our Guard or Reserve. So I urge this adoption. Costs are something that have been affecting everybody in our state. Rising costs for everything. I mean, us as good stewards of public funds, we have the duty to be responsible with money. And by limiting this, we're making sure that we are offsetting money for our constituents that could potentially be used other places. I find it fitting for me to point out, considering my current seat that I'm occupying, that the price of eggs has increased 700 or 800%. People are having a real hard time right now making ends meet. And those people that are feeling it the most are also people that may live in communities that they need to be able to defend themselves. And this is creating a roadblock. We want to make sure that we don't impede an individual's right to defend themselves. And this amendment, if we adopt it, will make sure that we decrease that to a reasonable amount. So I urge the adoption. Like we just heard, we're trying to find ways that would help our constituents in the event that this bill passes, help them save some money. This amendment, if adopted, would ensure that another one of the costs that can accumulate very quickly is minimized. So I don't think we need to go through the same arguments we all just heard. I would urge the adoption of this just to help with the costs for our constituents. One of the things this amendment would do is limit who has to pay the fee for fingerprinting. We've heard lots of discussion tonight about how much it costs with some of our agencies. This specifically would ensure that localities don't charge additional fees. I know that myself and my spouse, when we wanted to volunteer in our local schools, we were required to get fingerprinted. We were not charged for the background check fee, just the fingerprint fee through an agency that was selected by the district. And that was $72 each. And that was for a volunteer position in the schools. What this is going to do is limit who has to pay and limit out-of-control stacking fees that may happen with the implementation of the underlying legislation. So I urge this adoption. This underlying bill creates additional requirements of some of our bureaucracies. Well, one is the Washington State Patrol and the Department of Licensing. We're asking for registries. What this amendment would do is it would strip away the already onerous regulations that are being placed on our gun dealers and our small businesses. How many times do we need to go and tell our businesses what they need to do? First off, the federal government already requires a lot of this information. Second, the Washington State Patrol is unable to currently do all of the things we're asking them to do regarding firearms. We're not meeting our current obligations under the law. We all agree as a society that we want to have safety. Part of that is allowing lawful gun owners to have firearms. What I'm seeing is us trying to pass more legislation to help with public safety. And we're trying to create registries to help with public safety. What we're doing is we're doubling down on failed policy. We're doing it to make us feel good.
Speaker will remind the good member to speak to the policy. Please proceed.
This amendment will ensure that we're not creating more burden on our small businesses. This amendment will ensure we're not creating more barriers for people trying to exercise their constitutional right to bear arms, that our Constitution says will not be impaired or infringed. We don't have the authority to legislate in this manner. This is a right that was given to us by our Creator, and we cannot stand in the way. I urge we pass this amendment, and we tell the people of Washington that we respect their rights.